And it is a bounce back day, which is not uncommon in a market like this on a Tuesday, 3/17/2020. And I just recognized and realized I think it's St. Patrick's Day today. Is that right, boys?
Oh, is it? I totally forgot.
I think so. Anybody wearing green out there?
Well, the market's green. Pinch me.
Well,
Woo!
we're
No, we
practicing social
social
distancing.
distancing. No
Yeah.
pitching.
So no pinching, no pinching. Welcome out, everybody. It's Tackle Trading's Halftime Report, a daily market show where we go through all the news, the charts, everything that is on our mind to help you guys out there in our community understand what we're seeing so that you can make better decisions. Maddie, how you doing today, brother?
Oh, man, I'm partying like it's October of 2008, Tim.
It feels like October 2008 in many, many ways. These snapback rallies are not uncommon. In fact, the copy and the content on the Tackle Today email went through and detailed some of the biggest days in market history, Matt, and this is not going to surprise you. Most of them are after big market crashes. You know, that's when you get the short covering. That's when you get the big rallies, and the news can inject some optimism and some positivity. So we're getting a one-day rally here. Whether that continues, we'll wait and see. Marky and Noah, go ahead.
It won't. We're going to get another leg down.
I think so.
Every time you have these buying opportunities, I mean, some of it's short covering, some of it's algorithms. But Tim, there's nobody with confidence right now putting their toe in the water here. I
Who's
don't believe
buying?
this. Nobody. Algorithms.
Mark, who's buying?
It's mostly, listen, what we know about price action, this is mostly computerized trading. This is, you also have some money managers who apparently believe they're epidemiologists who just buy at certain points because they think they're smarter than the World Health Organization and everything else. And if you think I'm joking, watch CNBC when these talking heads come on and talk about great buying opportunities, or this is the time you come in, or we're confident of it. So money managers, algorithms, day traders, short covering, your usual suspects on a rally.
Noah, you buying?
I have made some plays. I put together a pretty awesome list on the stock report of candidates that are, I called it the coronavirus watch list. And these are companies that are doing well, because of this. And there's, I'm not taking like big positions or buying to hold. I'm putting on trading positions and using some options and things of that nature. So no, I'm not a buyer at these levels, but I am playing a little bit.
I could understand at least a case by case basis on certain companies like a Zoom Technologies or whatever. If somebody wanted to speculate with a certain position sizing, maybe. But the idea that you're not looking at the bear side of the market as well, guys, if you're out there team tackle, you got to be looking at both sides of this market.
No, for sure. I'm bearish. Like everything, I'm overwhelmingly bearish and hedged, and I'm even in cash. But I'm taking a stab at it here and there.
Let's break down the news here and let's talk about a lot going on actually here today. There's no doubt about it. First thing I want to talk about here are the bailouts, guys. A lot of chatter from the president, from the administration, from companies, including airlines and Boeing and many others. We'll get to the individual companies here in a minute, looking for corporate money to be injected from government to corporations. Matt, what's your reaction to this whole chatter, this conversation that's happening out there in the lexicon?
Well, that's why I said I'm partying like October of 2008. I wasn't meaning an up day in a bear market. I was meaning bailouts. Get ready for them. The Trump administration has proposed an $850 billion stimulus program, more likely bailout program. But that to me was fairly substantial from a stimulus perspective. It was just last week that I believe we put $8.6 billion in stimulus to kind of help fight the coronavirus. And part of that $850 billion is obviously going to be some bailouts to some industries that have been really, really impacted based on the corona situation. And that starts with the airlines. The airlines are seeking over $50 billion in bailout money. Just to give you a little bit of a comparison there, that is 3 times larger than the bailout they received after 9/11. What is interesting about what is going to happen, and it really does sadden me. Okay, and I want to get Noah and I want to get Mark's take on this as well. Why are we so scared to let capitalism actually work? Why are we so scared in letting these companies fail? Why do we have to constantly bail them out What do you why
I
do you
think
think?
the fear is unemployment and jobs, because those are big employers. That's probably, I think, where it stems from. But at the end of the day, I'm thinking a lot of these companies, mostly because of the way they have behaved in the last few years with their, aggressive stock buyback programs, for them to come with a handout to the feds, which, again, at the end of the day, comes back to the taxpayers. Not cool. And I think we probably should be willing to let them fail, and then they'll get bought up, they'll get restructured, they'll get reorganized.
Yeah,
I
that's
think they're also afraid of the failure of
capitalism.
interruption of service. Yeah, but they're also, I think, afraid of interruption of service. Like, okay, if airlines do shut down, then how do we get from point A to point B? Now
If
we're
they
going
bail
to,
them out,
Then help
when
me
can I
understand
expect to get my shares of my tax money they're going to use to help bail them out? Like, I just want to know how they're going to get those shares into my account.
Not going to happen.
Somebody please tell me how $50 billion is going to have consumers have the confidence to fly.
It's not.
It's not.
And I get the fear of jobs. I understand the economic impact, but wouldn't some other company come in and build a better company that would increase jobs,
Mark, I'm
increase
interested.
revenues, increase production?
For sure. I agree, man.
I mean, think about it, guys. If a company goes under, let's say American Airlines goes under, it's not like those planes cease to exist. They would sell off the assets to another company that came in and built a better airline. And this is on the backs, and this is what is frustrating to me. I get it. Again, I get it. Jobs, economic fear, pain, panic. I get it. But these airlines have spent over 96% of their free cash flow over the last 10 years on buybacks. Instead of building a safety net for some volatile time, instead of having cash reserves, instead of building a better plane and a better company, they have simply just bought up their own stock. And we're talking billions and billions of dollars. In terms of these companies we're going to bail out, guys. And again, I get it. Jobs, fear, panic. But these companies in the last 10 years have spent $4.3 trillion in buybacks. 4.3 trillion. In 2018, off the backs of the 2017 tax plan, we did a record $806 billion in stock buyback programs instead of going to wage increases, instead of building better companies, instead of increasing research and development, instead of having cash reserves for the rainy day. We just did buybacks. And then we did $1 trillion in 2019. And now the airlines and these publicly traded companies have the gall to come to the government and say, we need bailed out because we might see some jobs lost. You're going to see job loss anyways in that industry. And Boeing, don't get me started on Boeing. Boeing asking for billions of dollars in bailout money is just the most comical thing ever.
Let's get you started on Boeing. Bring up a chart on Boeing if we can here, Noah, because I think this goes to the core, and also United Airlines, both of them. You can bring up either one and have the same conversation. Mark, I'm interested in your take on this conversation as well, because here we are. We live in a capitalist country. In fact, Bernie Sanders basically got kicked out of his side of the election because of socialism and all the content I saw on social media and all that kind of stuff, people attacking it. But yet when it comes to corporations and a handout, those same people who are capitalist, and I'm not talking right or left, I'm talking about all of America, in face of fear and markets crashing and all of this, they're willing to completely change their tone, their stance, and basically their ideals. Why do you think that this bailout culture is something we're willing to let slide right now?
Well, I don't know if we are willing to let it slide. Listen, you're living in a very unique time. Obviously, we know this. This is unprecedented. I was talking to my neighbor. I've actually tried to do a better job talking to my neighbors the last few days. Reach out, you do the little elbow bump, doing our things to elbow bump, and talk about them. And the common thing in talking to my neighbors, talking to just all of that is everyone just feels for the waiters and the waitresses and the people that at the nail salons and the gym employees, and there is this huge, that is what is on people's minds right now, and none of my neighbors are in any of those fields, but that continually comes up time and time again, is that there's a lot of people in like that have real pain. And both on the left and on the right, there is an anti-bailout culture. If you remember John McCain in his presidential election, during the 2008 presidential election, adamantly against bailouts. adamantly against bailouts and had to capitulate a little bit and said, hey, well, we're going to have the whole financial system crash. So I don't know if this go around with so many real people hurting, if a mass bailout to every industry is going to have any political capital. You could no, not with so many people at once instantly hurt. Everybody knows a waiter, a waitress, a Nelson. I have a friend that just 2 months ago, bad timing, opened up her first entrepreneurial activity. She opened up a nail salon. Everybody knows somebody that is immediately, just instantly impacted. I think of the Japanese couple that I go to eat sushi. They have a little sushi place.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many real people. If the message from Washington, which I don't know if there can be any bipartisan support in the slightest, maybe for airlines on a short term, essential aspects, but a broad bailout this time around, I just don't see it culturally this go around.
Small businesses and consumers need help.
Sure. I think if anybody
That's
said small
who needs
businesses,
everyone would say yes.
Everybody would support it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Matt, gun to head, does Boeing get the money?
Of course they do.
Of course they do. Yeah. I mean, we can sit and chatter about it, but they're going to get the money.
Of course they're going to get the money. In the face of today, Boeing's bonds just got downgraded by the S&P 500. Listen, Karl Marx said it best 170 years ago. Capitalism leads to socialism. I don't think he was referring to corporate socialism. But as we go more corporate socialism, you're going to see more socialism in America, and I think that's a risk.
And for individuals I mean, Tim is a bleeding heart commie, but the rest of us, we have very strong capitalistic, free enterprise, conservative roots. And a real danger here is if politicians, through lobbyists and this corrupt network that's been built up over the decades, bail out these people again, you are going to say, listen, screw you, we're done. And they are going to turn to more radical forms of socialism.
Oh, you're going to see the pitchforks and torches come.
Yeah, you can't. And so if you care about capitalism, if you care about free enterprise, if you care, this is not the time to bail them out from you will have people vote for the next Bernie Sanders. You will have a radical rejection as people suffer while executives get bailed out for terrible buyback decisions. The buyback culture in America, hey, Boeing, go sell your stock that you bought back to fund yourself if you need it.
Well, they've been buying it back for too long. They don't have any cash now.
Exactly. And we're going to reward that behavior.
That's fine. And again, why would you reward that? Why would us as a public reward that type of behavior, which leads to more of that type of behavior in the future? I've said this many times in my life. I believe the bailouts in 09 bailouts in 08 and 09 was a massive mistake, because when you don't punish an industry or a sector or a company for bad behavior, it's like not punishing a child for bad behavior. They're just going to do more of it in the future. And that's really the only thing we've seen over the last 10 years is more stock buybacks, increasing dividend, less research and development, less building a fundamentally structured company. And in this environment, one of the reasons we've done more stock buybacks in this 10 years is because of asset prices. And as those asset prices go up, guess what the executives get paid out? Big time bonuses.
That's
big
right.
time bonuses, millions upon billions of dollars in bonuses. And I just think it's a really sad day when we're sitting around the campfire talking about, how we are fully embracing corporate socialism and not allowing capitalism to actually work. Capitalism is the answer. Let companies fail. Yes, it creates short-term volatility, and yes, it creates some panic and pain in the short term, but you build a better economy in the long term so that we don't have to go through these moments in time that really, I mean, the VIX, yes, I said the VIX for the second time in the last 2 weeks. The VIX closed at an all-time high yesterday.
Team tackle market. The VIX is coming up 2 times in 1 week from Coach Matt.
As it should.
Now back on AAL for a minute.
No. I'm here on the VIX now.
No, I got to point this.
All right.
Matt mentioned it. The guy's name, and we can come to the VIX in a second, Doug Parker. And here's where, Matt, I called you. I'm infuriated by the hubris from these corporations, and they know that people will always bail them out. They're assuming that. And maybe there's a culture right now that will push back on that and say no. Doug Parker in 2017, the CEO of American Airlines, he said, we will never lose money again based on industry consolidation, better logistics, and new types of fee-based products and services. Matt, you already mentioned this earlier, but I can't imagine why we would support bailouts for these companies. Let them fail. Come on, let them fail. Let's restart. Get money to consumers. Maybe, you bet.
They're going to get it passed, and it's probably going to get passed with massive bipartisan support. And nobody in America is going to question it until 2 years down the road when the recovery starts to happen. But in my opinion, it is a mistake. It is a mistake to bail out companies that have used their free cash flow. And most of the time, guys, over 50% of those buybacks have been funneled with debt transactions, not actually cash flow transactions.
At a minimum, listen, there was already like bipartisan support. I know Marco Rubio, I know many Democrats were speaking against stock buybacks long before this.
Mm-hmm.
So at a minimum, you might see at the end of this, like joint, like no companies, buybacks are over.
Yeah, and usually financial regulation does come out of periods like this. So hopefully we can get some better financial regulation on those buybacks. Let's move on to the VIX here for just 1 second. Noah, I don't want to not let you look at it real quick.
I'm fine with buybacks. You should not be able to use debt to do it.
Yeah. The VIX, Matt, is exploding. This is a reflection of risk in the market. It hit an all-time high, actually. I think it hit a record there yesterday.
So it's been higher, and back in 87, it hit higher, but this is high. This is insanely high.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, I mean, just a reflection of the market risk that we're in right now. Matt, does this make you want to bring the VIX back into your daily routine?
No. So the VIX is up and the market's down. Okay.
No, I just wanted to ask. The S&P 500 back on this one. By the way,
okay, so let me get this straight. So the market had the worst day it's had. The NASDAQ had the worst day it's had in its history. The S&P and the Dow had its worst day that it's had since that 1987 crisis. And the VIX is up. Okay. We're good.
The VIX is up. Yeah.
Well, no, Gino and I were talking about the VIX this morning in the Traders Lounge, and we talked about a system that helps you identify where market bottoms might come in because of the certain conditions on the VIX, and it's really more of a tool to help you understand, the momentum, the volatility shifts, and what I look for is the VIX to put in lower highs. After these spikes. So if it puts in a spike here, it hits 85, 80, 90, whatever it hits, and then it comes back down. And then the next time it only shoots up to 70, then the market's, the fear subsides.
Trend on the S&P 500.
Well, you can see it, but I'm saying it's a secondary indicator, just like a MACD or any other secondary indicator.
No,
I know, but the only thing you're describing is looking at the trend on the S&P.
I know. I'm just saying, hey, if you can get an extra data point to help you make that decision, perhaps some people like that.
No,
Quit pulling it.
You're going to be on this island alone. I am not.
You're going to be on this island alone.
I'm not.
Well, fine, guys.
All right. S&P 500 back on the chart here for a minute. I do want to look at multiple time frame analysis on this one. Obviously trying to find some 2400, but the intraday just shifted, guys. We're down about 2% since the halftime report started. You've got to pivot.
Are we the bearish signal?
We might be.
Well, no, I mean, here's the thing. So you have little spikes on Mnuchin, Trump's economic stimulus. The problem is the Fed and the fiscal stimulus. They're firing all of their bullets. They're like, we're firing a bazooka. And then Deborah Birx comes out and says, we are failing to contain the virus. And if Americans continue to go to bars, restaurants, and other, we're going to continue to fail.
Can we just have a public service announcement real quick, Mark? Let's all participate in social distancing.
Yeah.
Like she comes out and says, well, now we're not going to do a full coronavirus update because there's not a lot to add as far as new information from what we did yesterday. If you want a full one and you're new and you haven't heard our takes, we got lots of that on previous shows, previous reports. But right now, the messaging, Iran state media just came out in the last few hours and said, listen, guys, if you don't take this serious, millions of us are going to die. That was the state. France said, if you don't take this serious, this is going to get worse. The United States just gave the same message.
Doesn't France have the military in the streets trying to enforce quarantine?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you have such a segment of the world population, because you could say, well, it's Americans, it's millennials. No, it's apparently a human thing, because Iran's having the same problem, France is having the same problem, United States is having the same problem. So we are joint from Iran to France to the United States in a large segment of the population saying, no, I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to do what I want.
It reminds me of that South Park episode with Cartman.
Which one?
There's always
I'm going to do what I want.
So in the epidemiology class that I took back in college, there's a theory behind this. It's known as the tragedy in the commons. Is that no one person thinks that they're going to be the issue. They're like, well, everyone needs to quarantine, but you know, if I just go out, like that's not going to make a big deal. But then when you have millions and billions of people,
there's this thing in South Korea, and I want everybody to kind of go look it up. Tim, you were talking about it yesterday. Patient 31.
Yeah.
Right. One patient who did not take it serious. What percentage does it come back to?
I don't want to get the data wrong, but I think it's like 80% of the other reported cases came from patient 31's, actual tree of impact.
Oh,
she didn't.
That was one person who impacted thousands upon thousands upon thousands.
It's fascinating, actually, because South Korea, I mean, oh my goodness. And okay, I'm going to expand on this, but I want to hear more about tragedy of the commons. So that's taught in epidemiology classes, Cody?
Yes, it is.
That is fascinating.
So the metaphor they use is actually not for disease spread, but it works for this as well. If you imagine a community of say sheep farmers or something, right? And there's a plot of land in the very middle, and it's like, okay, this is open land, but we ask that no one use it. And then you have one herder who's like, well, I'll take my sheep over there to graze just a little bit. You know, it's not gonna hurt it. And then another one does the same thing. Before you know it, they've desecrated the entire field because everyone's their herd on this plot of land. So it's the mentality of thinking that you alone and your small impact isn't going to do anything, and the cognitive dissonance of thinking that when everyone does it, it's a tragedy of the commons, is that you end up destroying the common area because you alone think you're not the problem.
No,
a great theory.
And I want to get everyone's take on this, because this, like, if you want to understand where market sentiment is right now, think about this, and I want everyone's take on it. They just announced a $850 billion fiscal stimulus package, and the market started to go up. And one doctor came out and said, we're not doing a good job, and immediately it sold off.
We're in a bear market. I don't know.
I can't even focus with Noah doing what he's doing.
Well, I'm sorry. Mark just coughed and it freaked me out a little bit. So I'm just
can't get the coronavirus versus on Zoom.
Well, yeah, you proved that to me first.
Oh, well,
I've also seen Big Bang Theory, where what's his name's mom was like, I'm not going near the computer. I'm not going to catch one of those computer viruses. He's like, that's not how it works, mom. Are you a doctor?
I wiped down my computer for like the first time in probably longer than I should have not, wiped it down, but it's nice and clean. Justice household's clean today, Noah. We're good. We're good. I'm just working on the quitting smoking thing.
So, by the way, back on patient 31 real quick, Matt. And I think what it was, they only had 30 cases before this. They exploded into the thousands, I think 6, 7, 8,000 cases in South Korea. And this woman actually picked it up, from what I read, at the hospital. I think she got a car wreck. She went to the hospital. She got sick at the hospital. And then she spread it. Mostly what they can track it to is because she went to church, even after she was told to quarantine. And I think what it comes down to, she essentially said, I am going to church, and she decided not to self-quarantine, went to church. It then spread from there. Guys, your own personal risk may not be the issue here. If you go out into society and you do spread this virus and you know that you have been impacted or in contact with people, I'm not saying out there and team tackle it, but even if it is, can't we all suspend personal needs for a little while for the benefit of society?
You would think.
Isn't that a simple thing to do in a society?
You would think, but we'll see. We'll see how. Obviously, we're doing it, right? I mean, but at the end of the day, people are going to do what they do. But I don't think it's a difficult decision to make personally. Give up a little bit of your lifestyle for the betterment of humanity.
Yeah.
How is that a difficult choice?
I don't think it is, but obviously we also got to look at the markets every day and try to make sure we're not on the wrong side of this whole thing as it's developing and whatnot.
And I think the price action from the last hour or the last couple hours it lets you know everything you need to know. Because normally an $850 billion stimulus package would send algos, would send day traders, would send it would create a significant bump. Just the chatter of that magnitude. And one doctor comes out and says, no, because people have zero idea where this is heading. And so there is downward pressure.
I mean, we've been saying this for 3 weeks now regarding what the central bank is doing. So in terms of the last just couple of weeks, guys, the Fed has had an emergency cut of 50 basis points. Did the market respond positively to that?
No.
No. The Fed announced 1.5 trillion in repo actions. Did the market respond positively to that? No. Then the Fed goes to zero interest rate policy, injects $750 billion in fresh new quantitative easing, and it creates the worst market day since 1987. And then today, the central bank restarted the commercial paper market program, which was injected after Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008 to help with short-term loans. Karkashi basically gave an interview today where he said negative interest rates, although unlikely, are not off the table. So why has everything the Fed has done in probably the most radical 2 weeks I've ever seen or understood at the Fed, why has that not given the market, the confidence to push their money back into the market? The simple reality, guys, is this is not a monetary problem.
Yeah,
this is a healthcare problem, and we don't know the extent of the economic damage. We got to be data hunting here.
Yeah.
The problem might be so enormous that 850 doesn't even scratch the surface. When you think about the amount,
that's the first one.
I mean, you have 2.5 million waiters. I mean, when you think about it, what do they estimate that, like it's like 43% of America is in situations where like this type of situation would just, they don't have work. Like,
okay, I got a question for you then, guys. Is the gig economy dead?
Temporarily.
I was thinking about
temporarily.
Uber today, who's going to
get and think about how many people that impacts.
Yeah.
Again, corporations don't need help. People and small businesses need help right now.
Yeah. And by the way, Noah, get that back on a daily or weekly chart, big picture for a minute here while I have this.
Oh man, I was enjoying watching the intraday chart.
I do want to get your take on this, guys, because really, I mean, the conversations right now are big picture, individual company. There's a lot in between. These markets are completely fascinating to me on a day-by-day basis. One of the chatters right now, Matt, and it came out of even Mitt Romney yesterday, was talking about giving $1,000 to every American adult.
Maybe we should just make Andrew Yang president.
I mean, this is a Yang gang idea from 6 months ago, which everybody on both sides of the party that were not on the left were saying was crazy. And now in a panic, even the Trump administration.
Helicopter money is coming. It is coming.
Well, I think the big difference is one's a permanent policy decision. The other's a temporary action. And my hope is that the temporary fears don't push through permanent policies. That's where,
when was the last time we gave the government the ability to do something that when the situation was over, the crisis was over, they stopped doing it?
Never.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Once we give our liberties away to government, they don't give them back.
Noah, do you support it in the short term?
I think it's going to be necessary in the short term to avert bigger problems, bigger social problems. Because if you got people out there that are hungry and they're scared and they're frustrated, they're not going to be rational. Mm-hmm. Keep them safe. We can get over this, but it's got to be a temporary measure. And what I always worry about is what's paperclip to those bills they pass. Like, okay, we'll pass this, but we're also sliding through this, and this. So I think I'm one of those guys who believes in single page legislation. I don't want to see bills.
If you make bills,
and yet the current bailout will be hundreds and hundreds of pages,
and nobody will read it, and they'll vote on it, and they're gonna slip you.
There's gonna be a lot of pork in that.
Yeah,
and that's the most irritating thing when it comes to bills.
Yeah, Matt, it's probably going to happen in some form or another. I mean, whether it's a tax deferral or whether it's a tax kind of rebate or whatever it is, they're going to get money in the hands of people, don't you think? I mean, even Trump came out and
I think in the next 2 weeks you're going to see stimulus come in terms of free cash.
Yeah. Yeah. Stocks are
Now,
trying.
Will it approach? What would that be? If we gave everybody $1,000, we'll say, what would that price tag be?
Well, I mean, adult Americans, I don't know how many that is. Let's say half the American population
180.
is over 180 million. 180 million times $1,000. I think you're looking at $180 billion there.
180 billion.
Nothing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cheap. That's cheap.
Cheap.
So,
That's cheap
so
compared to
even if
nothing.
we gave $3,000, we're still talking less than the current bailout packages, right?
Yes.
Can we have somebody double check that math just to make sure? I don't want to have one of those MSNBC moments where they're
Oh,
like,
I had that moment last night.
Math
No,
is
I'm not
hard.
kidding. I had that moment last night with my daughter where she goes, yeah. And what about that Bloomberg guy who spent like 500 million on the election? He could have gave $1 million to everybody. I'm like, honey, that is not how math works.
180
And she
billion.
argued with me on it for like the next 45 minutes.
Team
Did you make
Tackle,
her
check
do the
my
math? Make her do the math.
I
Like,
pulled
on
out
paper,
the calculator. I
would've made her
literally
do the
pulled
math.
out the calculator, and she said that doesn't work.
And
But
yes,
then
it'd be
again,
150
she is a
billion if
lot
we give
like me, that even when she's not right in an argument, she's still going to be stuck in her ways.
little
Double
backfire
down, or
effect.
you shift the argument just
Yeah.
slightly.
I deserve every bit of what
Oh,
she does.
I was thinking the same thing. You deserve.
I do. I do.
Oh,
You know
it
what?
is accurate math, by the way. 180 billion. So
180 billion.
yeah.
So yeah, I do believe, Tim, that we will see a cash injection. And now, how do they do it? I mean, obviously, the economist Milton Friedman was one who kind of came up with the helicopter check ideas. But you know, I do believe you're going to see some of that in the short term. And you know what? As a capitalist free market guy, some of these things I'm like, oh, I just don't like. But it really kind of is needed right now. This is unprecedented what we're going
times
through.
of war and times of panic is when capitalists will be okay to socialist policies. Socialist policies.
Look at World
work
War
in
One. I mean,
short-term-
World War Two.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. They work in short-term crises. Now,
Listen, give those
that doesn't
waiters,
mean
give
they
those
need to be precedent.
waitresses. Give,
I
give-
agree.
Give the,
Yeah.
give the,
People
Well,
need help.
I mean, every retail employee, every service sector based
gosh.
employee.
and what
Like,
happens if you give, in a time like this, everyone money? Well, they're going to take it. They're going to spend it. It's going to boost the economy versus just paying the corporations.
Well,
directly.
and by the way, it'll
And
do the
customer
economy a
sentiment
heck of a
can go
lot
up.
more benefit than bailouts will.
Oh,
Mhm.
velocity of money would be phenomenal. Phenomenal.
be-
Oh,
crazy.
if
And
people
then-
only taught, they don't even teach velocity in economic schools anymore. The velocity of money is one of the most important economic concepts that people can understand. And it doesn't, and this is why the Fed is not working right now, because the Fed's policies don't create velocity of money. They just go, they have one utilization of the currency. You give people money, guess what? They're going to go spend that money. It's going to go to corporations anyways through economic value. So, you know, as a capitalist, yeah, these types of policies, you know, sometimes I cringe at. I cringe at bailouts all the time. I just think that is foolish policy,
Mhm.
and put short-term economic impact in front of longer-term economic impact. I just think that's a mistake. But in times like this that are completely unprecedented, I completely understand the government helping its people from a monetary perspective.
Yeah, 100%.
Dr. Anthony Fauci just said that it's possible we could see a peak in 45 days. Now, that one is an optimistic thing that I'm glad I love him so much. Seriously, can we all agree as Republicans, Independents, Democrats that Anthony Fauci is doing a masterful
He's a
job?
baller. He's been
doing a
awesome
great
in
job.
this situation.
Great job.
Like, he has done such a masterful job in calming me.
He's a calming influence, Mark.
Mhm.
He is. Like, I love him. Now, there's a couple things we need to know about that 45 days, because he's given us straight answers every time at every
Yep.
step along the way. 45 days, if that's great for a peak, because that would mean that, hey, that's a good scenario. It also means this 2-week fantasy, it's going to be longer than 2 weeks.
Oh, no. I told my daughter she's scheduled to go to some professional dance studio down in Phoenix for 6 weeks during the summer. I'm like, honey, you better plan on not doing that. This 2 weeks is going to be 30 days, and then it's going to be extended even longer, in my opinion.
Yeah. Who knows when that end timeline is? 6 weeks is what he just said, Mark,
Well, and once again,
45
he's
days?
like,
For the peak.
for the
yeah,
peak.
for the peak, and he says, like, listen, these are guesstimates. He's very honest. You know, this is based on what we don't. We, you know, as testing comes in, as this expands, you know, we'll have better information every day. But let me give you his exact quote. You
By the
have to
time-
be,
Go ahead.
when you
go ahead.
when you talk about a range, then a specific date, you have to be careful. When you get a number, you own that number. If that number does not come out, then you're in trouble. But he says 45 days is not unreasonable.
Mhm.
So
So-
some other good news, and I was reading up on it this morning. It's still a preliminary study, but there's been a study in a lab where they've been testing the virus by slowly increasing the temperature to try to see whether or not increasing temperatures would affect this virus similar to the flu. And the linear regression they're getting out of it is that higher humidity and higher temperatures does decrease transmittability of the virus. So that's a good thing. This is still a preliminary study, so this hasn't been published yet, but that's a good thing if that is.
Does that suggest global warming might save us?
I've seen that joke.
How conservatives
That
are
just
so-
says that normal seasonality could also help save us. So the idea of 45 days, that also plays into it because temperatures are rising right now as we move, from spring to summer.
Yeah.
So there's some good news coming out.
I hope so. I would love good news. I would love positivity. I get it. I just I don't understand the posts right now that are only trying to focus on positive to try to calm people. I don't need just fluff positivity. Cody, I'm not saying that's you, by the way. I appreciate that data point. What I need is factual information. I need.
Well, that's why
actual
you
data.
got to really respect Anthony Fauci and what he's been doing in those press
Is that how you
conferences.
pronounce his name? How do you
testimony.
pronounce his name? Fauci?
We'll have to
Fauci?
get Christian on
Fauci.
the line. Fauci.
Yeah.
There you
There you
go.
go.
No, and that is good, Cody. Hopefully the summer does kind of slow down the virus and whatnot, and the heat does come up. I would love to hear that. But I read a lot of stuff about this vaccine being released yesterday, and I went and looked at the data and the actual news. There's no vaccine yet. I mean, we have preliminary testing with some volunteers when we don't even know what the result of those tests are. It's still going to be some time for a vaccine.
Well, I mean, Regeneron came out today and said they're going to have phase 1 testing for the vaccine in sometime early summer. It's going to be faster than we think.
The
But even
vaccine's
4
not going to
months,
be the
6
solution,
months?
though. The
vaccine's
future.
not the cure.
No, the vaccine's going to be future for prevention. It may get tacked into, our annual vaccines that are just like, hey, do you want this vaccine? Here it is. That's the vaccine, something we need to think about a year from now for future outbreaks when it comes to Corona, which I'm also curious, like, is this vaccine just going to be this coronavirus, the 7th one, or is this vaccine going to be all inclusive of coronaviruses?
I
Who
don't know.
knows?
Markets are mixed here today on a day where there's a lot of news out there. Give me the dollar index real quick, Matt. You already hit on a lot of the Fed storylines, I know, but I do want to have a conversation about the dollar for just a second in the backdrop of the Fed. Fed printing all this money and the dollar's back up at 100. Matt, explain that to me and Team Tackle out there because I'm still scratching my head. This is one of the biggest rallies in the dollar we've seen in a long time on the back of all of this easing monetary policy. What is going on here?
It honestly, Tim, I asked myself the exact same question. What it really comes down to is let's think about it like this. When you're looking at every economic system around the world, even though we're struggling economically right now, we're still number one economically, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The dollar is still the number one currency in the world. It's a safe haven currency. You're seeing money come into the dollar from a safety perspective. But I think what the reality is here, and Noah, if you can give me a euro dollar cross pair, please. I think what the reality is the European situation is at this point, from an economic perspective, far, far worse than the US situation. Europe was heading into a recession before this situation happened. And now we're looking at an environment where, if you're talking about the euro versus the dollar, it wouldn't take me that long to say, give me the dollar. And so the euro's been plummeting as the news is beginning worse and worse and worse in the Eurozone. Most of those European Union states are basically, borders are being closed. The military is in the streets. Italy most likely is going to default on their debt, very similar to what Greece did in 2011 through 2015. So in that environment, I just think there's a perception based on data that the Eurozone from an economic perspective is much weaker than the United States. And when you look at the value of a currency, the value of a currency is a reflection of the value of the economy. And so I think you're having money come into the US dollar simply from a safe haven asset perspective, would never defaulted on our debt. The U.S. economy, although we have our bumps in the road, there's no doubt about that, is significantly in a better structured, stable perspective situation than what we're seeing in the Eurozone.
Yeah. Well, in Europe, I mean, they're even talking about stopping market, participation in the most direct way. They're putting short selling bans in. Macron's talking about coming in and bailing out every business in France. They're not going to shut things down from that perspective. I mean, the only way they can do this, Matt, is if they flood the markets with money. And obviously, when the economy is going into a deep recession, you got the problems you just talked about. Yeah, I think that's the reason why the dollar's up. Mark, can you think of any other argument as to why the dollar is rallying here besides just weakness globally?
I think dollar demand right now is strong. I mean, when you analyze this from a currency standpoint, and here I am talking about currencies, which means I've been researching currencies, which means my life really is not where I will want it to be. But I have been researching it because, whenever there's a phenomenon in the market that can impact other things, I'm like, all right, I got to go spend some time on the dollar. Right now, I think the dollar demand is really, really strong as people analyze worst case scenarios. If people analyze the total impact of this, you are going to see economies, if some of these models play out, with state-run media in Iran saying millions of people dead, with Europe, all that, the dollar demand in a world where there is so much uncertainty what economies are going to look like, there is faith in the United States to survive this economically. What we look like, whether we're in a depression, whether we're in a severe depression, whatever it is, I mean, we are still the economic, stallion of the world. Other countries what do they look like? Do they have the ability? Do they have the production capability? I think there is just a huge, massive dollar demand right now, a true, genuine dollar demand. And I think that's what's going on.
There is, but that also has an economic impact as well.
So here's a question.
I'm going to promise you the Fed's going to want to see that dollar go down in value, not up like it's doing.
Oh, I didn't even think about, Matt. Play that out, Matt. Play out a nightmare scenario with the dollar so high.
The nightmare scenario, if the dollar continues to price appreciate and we go through a recession and Europe can't buy any American goods.
They can't buy any American goods. Holy cow, I didn't even think about that. That is because if the dollar does skyrocket in this situation, the inability, I mean, a high dollar dramatically.
Won't that usher in negative rates?
Well, yeah, and that's why I say that's why I believe the Fed will go to negative, even though they stated today that it's unlikely, because they're going to do whatever they can to push the dollar back down in value. They don't want to see a strong dollar going into a recession. And I think everybody's waking up to the fact that we will be going through a recession. The only question is, and by the way, I think most sectors are already in a recession, but the only question is how deep does it go? But the Fed does, guys, no country in the world wants a strong currency going into a recession.
Holy cow, you absolutely right. I hadn't even thought. I mean, there's been so much to analyze and think about, but a high dollar. Oh my gosh, I'm going to just be talking about the dollar a lot from now on. I need to accept that as my new reality, along with social distancing.
Well, here's one for you. This is what they need to eliminate cash, because cash spreads the virus. So you're going to see us go all digital.
I do believe you're going to see a push on cashless society.
Yeah.
Now, I also believe that America will be one of the last countries to do it.
Oh yeah, because you can pry it out of my cold dead hands, right?
Exactly.
But,
exactly.
No, so like companies, that is another thing when you're looking at potential, because we all believe that there is a buying opportunity somewhere down the road.
Well, and there's a money laundering joke in here I don't want to miss. Sorry, we're gonna have to start laundering all of our money.
But in the evaluation of companies, as you're looking, because you're looking to find those companies that can do well in a new social distancing world, that have plenty of cash. I mean, there's this checklist of things. The amount of goods a company sends overseas now will go into that criteria of things I do. You want companies that might be more domestically as far as their total revenues, because if you have a skyrocketing dollar in a situation, companies that have a lot of business overseas, that's going to be one more thing that adversely affects them.
The
So.
joy I got from Noah bombing on that joke, I can't even describe.
Oh, come on, man. Just because you guys lack the
I was gonna let him
sophistication
ease on it.
to understand
I was
it.
gonna let him get a pass because it's just
Yeah, you know.
words.
Hey, I guarantee
like
a
all
test.
of
I
us
don't
were gonna
guarantee
let
out.
All of us were going to let Noah have a pass. All of us good old capitalists. And here comes Tim. I'm going to throw the pain on him.
Oh,
That's okay. I guarantee attempts, not
Oh.
execution, not actually connecting with the ball, but I'll take a whiff at it from time to time.
No, 10 out of 10. How do you rate yourself on that joke?
Oh, 10. Nobody did it better, really. So, you know.
It was a 10.
It was a
the
10.
greatest joke ever.
All right, let's move on through the markets here. Crude oil next, guys. By the way, it is not finding any kind of relief rally. In fact, it's breaking down intraday. We've got some really interesting price action here on crude oil. Obviously, crude has been in the news quite a bit. Bitcoin, nope, CL right here. Noah, break down that chart for me before we get into any of the kind of the fundamentals or the potential news and all that kind of stuff. Just tell me what you're reading from a price action standpoint.
Well, big momentum down, obviously, with the big gap down and the very lackluster rally. You're seeing it come back down to retest those lows, and I would expect it to actually break those lows. And this is one of those things where, what's the cost per barrel for the Saudis to produce it? $3. What are the Russians producing it for? Like 7 to 10, somewhere in there. And here we are in the U.S. at $50 a barrel. The cost of the fracking and the shale oil. So I mean, that's definitely. I don't see an end to the price war. And I think with the general economic slowdown, the glut of inventory is going to just increase. And so at some point in time, oil is a buy, but not yet.
Mark, the people that you trust, that you follow, that at least you respect what their opinions are, where are they projecting oil over the next quarter?
Whether it's equities or oil, the one nice thing about gathering people I trust over the years, and I try to pass that on to you, is that the universal thing is they're like, I don't know. That is the brilliant minds, people that are doing this a long while being like, I don't know, because you have two variables in oil going on right now. You don't know the sweeping effects of the coronavirus, but come on, and we've been talking about this for 8 weeks. Like when you have this demand shock that is created, people use less oil. And now that demand shock is only getting worse, right? As societies are shut down, not just in the United States, in France, in the Philippines, there's this huge demand shock. When is that going to end? I don't know. When is the war between MBS and Russia going to end? I mean, we're now what? 7 days in, 7 trading days, 9 total days.
Yeah, I think 8 last Monday, right? So Tuesday.
So this lover spat between Saudi Arabia and Russia. I mean, we're still going on. And if they're digging in their heels on both sides, like, Trump, he came out today to say, we got to protect Boeing. All right. So you got to protect Boeing, and we got to protect the airline. Listen, you can't protect everyone. You can't protect every company out there. There are going to be casualties in oil. And some of the casualties might be some really, really big names. Really big names. So
like Halliburton, maybe. Halliburton is really in pain right now. That's a big name, and they're under pressure. There's a lot. Schlumberger, there's so many that have been beaten up. Go to the intraday chart if you can here. And actually, we can go to the individual companies if you want, but first, crude oil on the individual intraday chart. Matt, 28.50 broke down here on the intraday. We talked about that K trade last week. Since that analysis, when we identified where the prices were, it's down about $7 a barrel. It's hard for me not to think about lower oil from here. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if anything in this market. Obviously, a disclaimer there, but I mean, Matt, where's the bottom for you on crude oil? Who the heck knows?
15.
$15. Mark, is that out of the question?
I've heard some people. Listen, oil traders are a bunch of sewing circle people, like sitting around, rumor, guessing, postulating. But those.
We love getting into the head of Putin and MBS and trying to psychoanalyze everything.
And it's one of the reasons I like, because we all need our little gossip circle, right? And
I enjoy it.
And for me, that's oil traders. And oil traders have been right in their sentiment going for 8 weeks now. And that sentiment right now, you are hearing things in the low teens thrown out for the first time in my trading life, like as speculation of like, listen, like you have no idea how low this can go, but it's
Well,
low.
You definitely broke that intraday support level. $30 was a psychological level on the break. You do have an intraday low at 27.34 from the gap down after the announcement from last week with MBS and Putin, not playing kiss and tag. The breakdown of intraday at 28.50 probably leads to the retest of 27.34. But what I'm mostly interested is $26. $26 has been a major level of support multiple different times. Now, it hasn't been down there since really kind of the late 90s, early 2000s. But you break 26, next stepping stone is down around 20. And after that, 15 is not out of the equation. And wouldn't surprise me in any capacity. We're dealing with a global shutdown, guys, where we're literally talking about bailing out trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars worth of companies. And, staring smack dab into one of the worst economic global situations we've seen since the Great Depression. And on the back of this, Putin and MBS are being like, let's play chicken here. Who's going to blink first? And neither one of them will. So am I interested in oil at 28? No, I might not even be interested at 20, but there is going to be a time, whether that's at 20 or 15, we're going to have to see it in the chart. We're going to have to see it in more importantly, we're going to have to see Putin and MBS come to some type of conclusion here.
Well, and I think there's an important point there. And I think everybody out there in Team Tackle needs to get their head around this. The price isn't when the timing is. It's when the economic indicators come back. It's when the COVID-19 data settles out. It's when there's so much more. It doesn't matter whether it's 2015, 10, or even 26. It's when those
two
other
updates doesn't convince me. That's not a reversal.
No, obviously not.
And we'll be all over that for all of our members when that happens. Like,
absolutely.
This is all we do these days, is that we analyze more data than we ever have at any point because there's more data to analyze. I want to make one last comment on crude oil before we move on. There was that chatter and people had some questions about Trump when he said we're going to do whatever we can to add to our strategic reserves. One of the reasons that hasn't had a lasting bump in any sense of the fashion is that we just don't have that type of additional capacity right now.
We're already at near, we have to be at near max.
No,
don't you think buying oil right now when people need money is the wrong political move?
Well, even if they decide to go ahead and do, once again, I got, the thing about it is I love the messaging Trump gives. And right now, and I ask everybody in America, left, right, listen, as right now, Trump is taking this very seriously. And so if the media and if Democrats could say, all right, we'll criticize him after this is over, the time for politics, as long as he's doing what you want, right? He's acting serious.
I agree with you, Mark, but he deserved criticism for being really slow to the table here.
Well, yes, and I share that criticism.
I have appreciated his press conferences over the last few days. He's obviously pivoted to take this extremely serious, and I hope that maintains.
I hope that maintains, because the Donald Trump I've seen in the last 24 hours has been a president.
Yeah.
So I want to see that president moving forward, and let's hope he does. But like, we just don't have any strategic reserves right now. He could buy and there'd be a couple weeks and then they would all be full. So there's just not a lot that the U.S. can do as far as buying oil, unless they're buying oil future contracts from the Fed or something.
Oh God, I would hope not.
I think they're going to punt on all of it and they're going to focus on fiscal stimulus and all these other things.
I don't think they're buying oil.
Yeah. You can't save everything.
You can't.
I don't think they're buying oil.
Gold and silver here next, Matt. We got an interesting text message from our little brother, and I thought it was a really cool one. You answered him. I think I want to ask it here on the podcast as well. He says, "Why is gold up and silver's down?" And gold
silver's an industrial metal. Gold's a safe haven.
Yeah. Gold holding the line here, showing some strength, not a panic moment on gold if you're a gold owner. Obviously, there's still risk in products, Matt, but gold trying to find some support. Silver's still getting beat up really, really badly. Mark, when you're looking at the metals market, is gold the only one you're interested in?
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Because once again, silver, I'm developing this huge long list of things that it's like a Christmas shopping list. Of when Christmas comes, which means COVID-19, we've reduced, we've flattened the curve. When you see economic data, so I got this huge Christmas shopping list, and silver's certainly on there. But silver is fits the same paradigm that copper does, that oil does, that equities in a broad sense do, if you're not cherry picking things that you feel can thrive in this situation. Silver fits that. So unless you are gold, which once again, we've been very, very clear on our stance on gold. From a long-term perspective. So silver is there one day on my Christmas watching list, but the plain and simple fact is it is not the type of safe haven. It is an industrial metal that during these calamitous times is going to get beat up.
Hey, silver got beat up worse than the stock market did in 08.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 09 when it found a bottom that it had its historic run from $8 a coin to $48 a coin. Yeah. So silver's going to have its day. That day is not today, but it will have its day.
Because once the industrial part of it is done, once the economy hits bottom and starts turning around, then that precious metal part of silver.
Yeah, you buy during the recovery here.
And so silver should be on your Christmas watching list, and it should maybe have a substantial part of that Christmas watching list. And let's just hope it doesn't happen until Christmas, right? Let's hope Christmas comes a little earlier than that.
It might be until Christmas, actually. Yeah, that might be a little bit fortuitous. March, is an interesting month here in the markets. There's no question about it. There are a lot of companies that are grabbing my attention, Matt. I want to run through a few of them. Zoom Technologies, which we are on right now, and it was also on your watch list, Noah, from over the stock report. If you've not seen the stock report from the weekend, after this halftime show, go check it out. I thought it was fantastic and very, very good. Zoom, actually, one thing I loved about this, they offered free Zoom to schools for people who need to do, kind of classroom work and whatnot and do video stuff from schools to people who are doing it from home. Matt, what's your read on Zoom here?
They need to let me render the podcast so I can get it out there. That's my perspective on Zoom right
complaints.
Now. Personal first world problems there, Tim. Obviously, Zoom is one of those household products that is going to be a potential good investment here. It's a company that obviously we like. We're sitting here on Zoom right now, but the reason we bring it up today is not because of any of that, but they were just named a buy at, I believe, Needham. So they got rated as a buy today.
Yeah, they got an upgrade. That does make sense to me. Some other companies, Matt, Nordstrom's, they had some news here recently. What was it?
They just shut down their stores.
It makes sense. If you're in the service industry, by the way, Nordstrom's, look at the chart. My word, if you're working for these companies, expect a phone call or text if you've not gotten it in the short term, and how long that lasts, who knows. Marriott, by the way, bring up Marriott. They just actually announced that they're going to furlough their employees, not fire them, but furlough them, Matt, because if they fire them, they go to unemployment, and they're not giving them pay on the furlough yet, is what it is. Many people who are off work, they say you might be able to come back here in a month or two. Not leadership here in a time where people are panicking.
They're not paying their employees.
Yes.
Give Facebook a little credit then. They did the same thing, but they kept paying them and they gave them $1,000 bonus check.
Yeah. Big tech. I mean, we saw some.
Listen, I'm not a fan of Mark Zuckerberg, but that's a class move.
Yeah. McDonald's, bring this one up. You're going to hear more stories just like this. They're closing.
McDonald's just shutting down their stores. Drive-through still available.
Yep. Yeah. And then Tesla. Let's bring up Tesla. What was the news?
Tesla, they just put out their first, I believe they delivered their first Model Y SUV. And that is the news on Tesla today.
Was it you?
That Elon thinks the Corona situation is a conspiracy.
Yeah. All those people that ordered those SUVs for the $200 down, I'm guessing they're not taking delivery.
You don't think they're going to put forth that's the money? Maybe not.
It is funny. So much more obviously going on around the markets. Matt, we miss anything here?
Pull up Regeneron real quick. I talked about it earlier, but let's look at the chart. We are seeing Regeneron break out today. One of the few stocks breaking out and it's you got, they say they're going to have a COVID-19 vaccine test by early summer.
Love to hear it. That would be awesome. Positive news out of that area.
It's RGEN.
Yeah, they just, for whatever reason, switched back to Tesla on me. I can't describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Keep an eye on that 500 handle. That'd be a pretty clear breakout there.
One more from me. FedEx.
FedEx after the bell.
That's
going to be important.
Yeah.
Yep, that's going to be important. The economic data we did get, retail sales here came in as a negative. We haven't started seeing the COVID corona situation from an economic perspective. We'll start seeing that in next month's economic reports. We did get some Chinese economic reports that are starting to show some pretty glaring damage that that economic system is not going to recover anytime soon. FedEx reports after the bell, and obviously that, you know, one of those travel type companies that we've all said stay away from. And it's going to be interesting to see how this situation has impacted the revenues.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously earnings reports, data, it's going to be slow to trickle in over time. It's going to start getting worse and worse and worse. I saw those retail sales numbers for February, Matt, and I just thought, wait till we get them for March and wait till we get them for April and wait till actually we get the Chinese data now. It's going to get worse before it gets better in the data. Don't you guys think?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right, guys. Markets. One quick last peek at the S&P 500 on the intraday. Noah, you know, during the halftime report, we've seen some wild swings. Like everybody's been watching them out there. Obviously, markets are bouncing around. I've got a question for you guys here. 2447 is where we are. 24. Actually, we bounce back up. 2470 on the intraday chart here. Do we end above or below 2500 here, Matt? What if we had to make a steak dinner bet?
Are you giving me, because you already owe me like 3.
I think we're even. I think we already called it even.
Oh my God, you make up stuff all the time.
Cody, I think we're even.
No, there's
right?
no bet. There's no bet. No, you are the worst gambler of all time, because when you lose, you never pay up.
Mark's known that for a long time, by the way.
Out of every game we've played in the last year, there's no way we're even. I think 3 is like the nicest number I could give you.
Mark, over under 2,500 by the end of the day.
Under.
I hate your stupid games.
That's why I always lose the games on the podcast.
Okay, no, but I will make a thing. I think at some point we're going to play stock in the box. You know, we've had a swift downtrend for 3 weeks. I think at some point, because we got Fed, we got stimulus, we got government doing all kinds of stuff, throwing the kitchen sink, and we might hit this low because where's the next batch of bad news coming from? Like the really scary one. I mean, we know that things are closing down. Like, what's the next catalyst to freak people out or send people euphoric? I think we might play stock in a box where you have this wild range develop.
I think for day traders, you already have it. Look at the hourly chart, Noah. I mean, 2350 to 2550, a 200-point range on the S&P, which, by the way, is crazy on a big range. But
if gun to head, I say no.
Yeah, I don't think so. We will see. Obviously, volatility's been crazy. Noah, great job today. You did a fantastic stock report over the weekend, Noah, by the way.
It was fun.
Yeah. If you're a pro member and you've not seen it, go check it out. And if you ever want to join our community, we always give you a 15-day trial, Matt, because quite frankly, we know what we do is providing value. We put our back and sweat into this for a reason, because we love our community. 15-day trial in the comments and the link below. Matt, great job today. Mark, great job today. Noah, as always, wonderful job. Sorry about making fun of your bomb on the.
Well, that's okay. It wasn't really a bomb because I got a couple of, charity laughs. So it was okay.
Charity laughs don't count.
Sure they do. Sure they do. If you're desperate enough, yeah.
No, they don't. All right, guys, we'll be back tomorrow.
One last thing, Tim, and I'm sure everyone agrees. Like, do something nice for someone today. Send someone a message saying, "Hey, if you need anything in the couple weeks, let me know." Let us be part of that positive solution in society. It is needed more now than ever. Those little acts of kindness, they'll have a domino effect in society. So
who knew the end of the world would bring Mark's charitable, kind heart out?
Listen,
the guy who created Max Loss is now the kindest individual I've ever met.
Listen, Max Loss is shelved for now. Like, this is not the time for Max Loss.
He's got to be.
He's shelved for now.
But, I certainly agree with that sentiment, Mark. In times of crisis, we have a tendency to come together. So let's just do that. Let's come together and help each other out.
Call 5 friends, see how they're doing.
Seriously.
Ask an old neighbor. That's the other thing. This virus, older people can't, get out, and if they do, it's harder for them to even try to fight these crowds to get supplies. If you know someone and then you can help them out by getting them some groceries.
Kudos to dollar store. Listen, the companies that act responsibly in this crisis, I will never forget. Kudos to dollar store. Kudos to a lot of grocery chains for starting to set up an hour before anyone else can shop for the elderly and the people most impacted by the potential contraction to come shopping before anyone else does. Love that.
that's good.
Love that from dollar store. I would love to see more grocery stores and dollar stores lead by example, because I was just like, that's a brilliant idea. That was
I love that.
idea.
That's awesome. Yeah, we do need leadership, and it starts with us.
Breaking: the UK pledges 400 billion to help businesses through Corona. That's a big ticket for the UK.
You're going to see more of it. That's why the dollar's rallying. We know Europe's going to print to everything as well, Matt. They're going to flood their markets with money too.
Yep. Race to the bottom on the currency.
All right, guys, we'll break all the news down tomorrow when we're back. Great job today. We are out.